Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Let's Talk English with Emily Carpenter. I'm your host, Emily, and I'm so excited to be here with you all today. We've got another fantastic episode lined up to help you boost your English skills in everyday life in the United States.
And I'm Jennifer, Emily's friend and co-host for today's episode. This is my first time on air, and it's always so much fun to be here and just chat about things we all encounter.
Hey, Jennifer. It's always a pleasure having you on the show. Today, we're diving into a topic that is absolutely essential for anyone living in or visiting the U.S., or even just for understanding everyday American life. Grocery shopping like a local. And it sounds simple, right? Like, hey, Emily, I know how to buy food. But trust me, there's a whole world of English communication happening in those aisles.
Yeah, I totally agree with your point, Emily. We all need to eat, and that means we all need to shop for food. It might seem simple, but navigating a U.S. grocery store can be a whole new experience if you're not used to it. And it's not just about grabbing what you need and going. From trying to find that obscure ingredient for a new recipe to having a quick chat with the cashier, every trip to the grocery store is a mini lesson in conversational English. And it's not just the grocery store. Whether you're trying to find that one specific ingredient, asking about a sale, or just making small talk at the checkout, knowing the right words and phrases can make a huge difference. It's not just about buying food, it's about confidently interacting in a common, daily scenario. This episode is designed to give our listeners the tools they need to feel comfortable and competent during their grocery runs. And confidence in communication can make your life so much easier and less stressful, I believe. So today, we're going to share some of our own experiences, the good, the bad, and the sometimes embarrassing, and give you all the tools you need to feel like a seasoned pro at the grocery store or the mall.
We'll dive into why it can be tricky, share our best tips for talking to employees, and then, of course, break down some key words and phrases you'll definitely want to know. So, get ready to fill in your shopping cart because we're heading to the grocery store. Let's just jump right into it. What's your typical shopping routine like? Are you one of those super organized list makers, or are you more of a fly by the seat of your pants kind of shopper? Why, Emily? I wish I was the fly by the seat of your pants type, but no, I'm absolutely a list maker. I've learned the hard way that if I don't have a list, I'll end up buying all sorts of things I don't need and forgetting the essentials. My routine usually starts checking my pantry and fridge, thinking about what my family actually need, then planning out meals for the week. And finally, I make a very specific list, usually on my phone these days. I aspire to be you, Jennifer. I try to make a list, but sometimes I get easily distracted by new products or a great deal. I'm completely dazzled by new snacks and interesting displays. I remember one time I went into the store just for eggs and milk, that's it. And I walked out with a huge, oversized bag of chips, a new plant for my living room, and a book I absolutely did not need. My husband just looked at me like, "Did you even get the eggs?" It was a total impulse buying disaster.
Oh, I totally get that. Those end cap displays and the buy one, get one free signs are designed to get you. It's so easy to get sidetracked. But that brings up an interesting point about U.S. grocery store experience, right? They're often massive, almost like small cities with so many departments and designed to encourage impulse buys. You've got the produce, the dairy, the bakery, the international food section. It can be a bit overwhelming if you're not used to it. Overwhelming is the perfect word. I remember when I first moved to a new city, trying to find specific ingredients was like a scavenger hunt. They have so many different departments: produce, dairy, meat, bakery, frozen foods, international aisles. And I spent 20 minutes looking for tahini once. And I just kept walking past the international aisle because I didn't realize that's where it would be. I felt so silly. And it's not just grocery stores. Malls, for example, have their own vibe. You might go to a mall for clothes, electronics, or just to hang out. The pace might be a bit different, sometimes more relaxed. Unless it's a huge sale day like Black Friday, then it's a mad dash.
Speaking of malls, do you prefer online shopping or going to a physical store when you need something like clothes or electronics?
For things like clothes, I definitely prefer going to a physical store. I like to try things on, feel the fabric, see the true color in person. Online shopping is convenient, but I've had way too many online shopping fails where something looks amazing on the model and then I put it on and it's just not. And you can't beat the experience of seeing and touching the actual product. Plus, returning things online can be a headache. So, to me, the returns process is often easier if you can just bring it back to the store. Oh, I've had those fails too. I once ordered a raspberry pink dress that looked perfectly and super lovely online, and when it arrived, it was practically a red rose. Total disaster. For electronics, though, my husband and I always do research online first, but then both of us will go to a physical store to see the item, ask questions, and maybe even compare models side by side. You can get some really knowledgeable staff at electronic stores. And that brings us to the core of today's topic, communication. Whether you're in the produce section of a grocery store or looking for a new fridge at the mall, you're going to interact with people. And sometimes those interactions can be challenging, especially if English isn't your mother tongue. Absolutely. Similar as other episodes, we're not just talking about vocabulary, we're also talking about understanding the nuances of a conversation, picking up on different accents, and having the confidence to ask for what you need without feeling embarrassed. So, Jennifer, let's really dig into why some of our listeners might find communicating at the grocery store or mall can feel like a whole different ballgame. What are some of the biggest hurdles you think people face? That's a huge point, Emily. I think one of the top challenges is simply the speed of conversation. In everyday situations, especially in a busy store, people often speak really quickly. And they might use idioms or slang or cultural references or even just shortened phrases that aren't typically taught in any textbooks. This can make it hard to process what's being said, even if you know the individual words. Oh, I totally agree with your point, Emily. To add to that, the variety of accents can be a curveball. You know, the United States is such a diverse place, and you'll encounter people from all over the country and indeed all over the world working in these stores. Someone from New England might sound completely different from someone from Texas, and it takes a lot of exposure to get your ear trained. I've had friends from other countries tell me they sometimes just freeze up because they can't quite distinguish the words through a particular accent. You're so right. I even remember once I was looking for cilantro, you know, the herb, and I asked an employee, but my pronunciation wasn't quite right at that time, and his accent was quite strong and deep. Even his English is very well. We went back and forth for about a minute, and I just kept repeating cilantro, and he kept saying something that sounded totally different, and it was just an awkward conversation until I finally pointed to a picture on my phone. We both had a good laugh about it afterward, but at that moment, it felt a little frustrating. It was a good lesson in knowing when to just point or use a visual aid. Yeah, that's a perfect example. And then there's another significant factor is specific vocabulary. Every single industry has its jargon, and retail and groceries are no exception. We're talking about terms like produce aisle, bulk section, checkout lane, unit price, or rain check. If you don't know these terms, it can be confusing. It's not just hard to ask a question, it's also hard to understand the answer as well. I remember a friend once asking me what a deli counter was because in her country, she just bought pre-packaged meats. It's those little things that can trip you up. Or even things like bakery for bread and pastries or dairy aisle for milk and cheese. If you're looking for something specific and don't know the right department name, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. I once spent way too long looking for baking soda because I was looking in the baking mixes aisle when it was actually in the spice aisle. So many specific aisles and sections. And let's not forget about social cues and cultural norms. This is a big one. For example, in the US, it's super common to make a little bit of small talk with the cashier. They might ask, "How are you doing today?" Or, "Did you find everything you needed?" For some people, especially if they're from a culture where interactions with service staff are more formal or less conversational, it might feel awkward.
They might not know how to respond appropriately, or they might feel pressured to have a long conversation. Oh my gosh, yes. Sometimes it's not about the English itself, but about understanding the unspoken rules of interaction. I've heard from so many people that they dread the question of, how are you doing? Because they're not sure if the cashier actually cares or if they just need a quick, polite response. It's often just a formality, knowing that a simple, I'm doing great, how about you? Or, I'm good, thanks, you too. Or, yes, I did, thank you, is usually all that's expected, can honestly relieve a lot of pressure. One time, I was at a self-checkout, and the machine froze, and I tried to explain the problem to an employee, and because I was flustered, my words all got jumbled. The employee was super patient, but I felt so flustered that I couldn't clearly articulate the issue. It was a good reminder that even native speakers can get tangled up when they're stressed. So, knowing these common stumbling blocks, what's the best way for our listeners to start chipping away at them? What's the first step?
I think the absolute first step is not being afraid to ask for clarification. It is perfectly okay to say, could you please repeat that? Or could you speak a little slower? Or even, I'm sorry, I don't understand that word. Most employees are very understanding and happy to help you. They deal with all sorts of questions all day long. That's so true. They'd rather ask you than walk away confused or frustrated. Another really helpful tip is to prepare some common phrases in advance. Even if you just have a few go-to questions ready in your head, like, where can I find item? Or is this on sale? It can make a huge difference in your confidence and reduce the panic. Definitely. And try to listen actively to the conversations happening around you. Even if you're not participating, just observing how other customers interact with employees, what phrases they use, how they respond. That's an incredibly valuable learning experience. Free English lesson happening right there. You're immersing yourself.
And finally, and this is so important, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Jennifer and I, as native speakers, make mistakes all the time. When you're learning a new language, making mistakes is just part of the process. The goal isn't perfection, it's communication. The more you try, the more comfortable and proficient you'll become. Every trip to the grocery store is practice.
Exactly. Think of every grocery trip, every mall visit as a mini English lesson. You're getting real-world practice, and that's truly the best way to improve.
All right, so now that we've talked about why it can be tricky, let's get into the good stuff, those practical, actionable tips to help you feel like a total pro on your next shopping trip. We're going to break this down into a few common scenarios you'll definitely encounter.
Sounds good. Let's start with what's probably the most frequent interaction: finding items or simply asking for help on the floor. This is probably one of the most frequent interactions you'll have with store employees. So picture this. You're looking for something specific, let's say oat milk, and you've locked down every single aisle 3 times and you just can't find it. You spot an employee. How do you even begin that conversation? First things first, just make eye contact and a polite greeting. Something super simple and non-intimidating, just to get their attention, with excuse me, or hi, excuse me, or a bit more formal, but totally fine, with pardon me, and then clearly state what you're looking for. Be as specific as you can, even if you just point to a picture on your phone like I did with the cilantro. Here are a few ways to phrase your question. Notice how polite they are. Do you know? Could you help me? I'm looking for item. You can go straight forward with, excuse me, do you know where the oat milk is? Or asking for help first is always good, like, hi, could you help me? I'm looking for the cereal aisle. It's always work with some friendly greeting, like, hello, I can't seem to find the fresh produce. Could you point me in the right direction? Or, hi there, I'm trying to find gluten-free bread. Do you carry it? The employee might give you directions that sound like a treasure map. It's in aisle 7 next to the dairy section. Or go straight down this aisle, turn left, and it'll be on your right. If you didn't catch it, do not be afraid to ask them to repeat it. I've done it a million times, even as a native speaker, especially if the store is noisy. I completely agree. Never be afraid to ask them to repeat something if you didn't quite catch it. It's not as hard as you think it might be. I can show you a few phrases that might help. You could say something like, "I'm sorry, I didn't get that. Could you repeat more slowly?" Or use a confirming question, such as, "Did you say aisle 7 or 9?" It's also always a good idea to check your understanding by trying to repeat what you heard, like, "So go left at the end of this aisle." This is super helpful because it not only confirms it for you, but also lets the other person know their instructions were understood correctly. It's just like how pilots and air traffic controller communicate to ensure everything is clear. And don't forget the magic words. Always, always say thank you. A little gratitude goes a long way. Yes, so thank you so much. I really appreciate your help. Or that was very helpful, thanks, are always working. They're perfect to end the conversation on a positive note and leave a great impression on anybody. Now you have already grabbed something on your cart. Let's move to the deli counters for sliced meats and cheeses, or bakeries with fresh bread. These are places where you often get slightly more detailed interaction because you're usually making a custom order. And don't be surprised, the employees behind these counters are usually super busy, so you'll want to be clear and concise. Let's say you're at the deli and want some turkey. The employee will typically greet you and ask, "What can I get for you? What would you like?" Or even a very simple "next" if they're really swamped. So be ready. Okay. I don't know about you, but I usually specify the item and the amount. Here are a few common ways I phrase it. "I'd like a pound of sliced turkey, please." Or for more detail, "Could I get half a pound of sharp cheddar cheese, sliced thin?" Adding sliced thin is super helpful, you know? You can also check for availability, like at a bakery with, "Do you have any fresh sourdough bread today?" Or, "Could I get a dozen of those chocolate chip cookies?" Oh my gosh, I'm hungry now. I totally do the same thing. One more tip, employees might ask about the thickness for meats or cheeses, like, "How thin would you like it? Thin, medium, or thick?" Or, "How would you like that sliced?" You can just say, "Thin, please," or "Medium slice is fine." My personal preference is usually "as thin as you can get it," or "just a regular slice." And if you want to try something new, don't be shy about asking for a sample. Like, "Could I try a sample of the smoked goose?" It's totally normal and expected at the deli. And of course, don't forget to say thank you to everyone you interact with.
That's perfect, Emily. And this is probably the interaction you'll have on pretty much every single shopping trip. Thankfully, it usually follows a super predictable pattern, and you'll hear a lot of standard phrases here. This is when you're interacting at the cashier counter. Believe me, the cashier will almost always greet you and maybe make a bit of small talk like, "Hey, how are you today?" Or, "Did you find everything you needed?" And if you have a small basket, they might even ask, "Just these?" But honestly, I don't think Jennifer and I ever get that question since we always have a ton of stuff on our to-buy list. Haha, you bet. And to respond, remember our earlier point about small talk? Simple, polite responses are always best. If you want to keep it short and sweet, "I'm good, thanks. How about you?" is a great choice. Or you can make it simple, like, "Yes, I did, thank you." And if you didn't find everything, but it's still okay with you, you can say, "Mostly thanks." When all items are checked, they'll often ask about bags, especially in places that charge for them or if they're trying to be eco-friendly. So don't be surprised when they ask, "Do you need bags?" Or, "Did you bring your own bags today if you have reusable bags?" Yeah, and don't be shy to say, "Yes, please," if you need bags. Or your response can be quick and easy, like, "No, thank you, I have my own," if you've brought some. Personally, I usually avoid plastic bags because I'm eco-friendly. I just take the shopping cart right to my car where I've already got my own reusable bags or carton boxes in the trunk to load everything into.
Oh, you're amazing, my friend. I learned that from my parents too, and it's still my routine every time I go to the grocery store or supermarket. But let's get back to the cashier counter as I don't want security to ask me if I'm not paying the bill. So, in America, we don't really use much cash anymore, but the cashier always needs to ask about your payment method. They might say something like, will that be cash, card, or mobile pay, meaning Apple Pay, Google Pay, or something like that. You just state the method you're comfortable with. I usually pay with Apple Pay because it's simple and secure, but don't forget to hold up your phone so they can scan it.
I usually pay by credit card, but I totally agree with you that mobile payment is much more convenient nowadays, especially since nearly everyone has a smartphone on hand. After payment, the employee might also ask if you want your receipt, which is super important for returns. If they don't explicitly ask something like, do you need a receipt? Or would you like a paper or email receipt? Feel free to ask them, can I get the receipt? It's always good to have it, whether you need to double check your list or just keep track of how much you spend. And finally, before you leave, they'll almost always offer a polite farewell like, have a good day, or thanks for shopping with us, or see you next time. It's always polite to respond in kind with something like, you too, or have a great day, you know? But hold a sec. What if you've got what you want to buy and you have a tiny doubt about it? This is absolutely crucial, especially when you're buying something more expensive like clothes, electronics, or even a gift for someone you love. You really need to ask about the return policy at the counter.
Ah, you're right. Thanks for reminding me. I totally forgot about this. For clothes, I usually ask, can I return this if they don't fit? Even if you try it on in the fitting room, sometimes your mind just changes when you get it home. Or if you're completely unsure about the return policy, you could simply ask, what's your return policy on this? Then the employee can explain it easily.
One more thing you could ask is about the maximum return period. How long do I have to return this item? And if returns are allowed, it's always good to confirm if you need to keep the receipt safe and bring it back with you. So, do I need the receipt to return it? Is the best option. When you ask, the employee will usually give you a common response like, you have 30 days to return it with the original receipt for a full refund. The number of days allowed really depends on the store. And also be careful with end-of-season sales or clearance items. Usually no returns are allowed on those, so don't be shy about asking if they're non-returnable. You definitely don't want to assume you can return something, drive for half an hour, and then find out you can't take it back. That's never fun. It's so important to understand these policies to avoid disappointment later. I once bought a pair of shoes thinking they'd be perfect, didn't check the return policy because I was in a rush, and then realized they were the final sale. They hurt my feet, and I was stuck with them. So, lesson learned, always ask.
Oh no, that's the worst. And if you do need to return something, you'll usually head to the customer service desk, which is often near the store's entrance. So, what would you ask there?
Just present the item and the receipt if it's required for the return and say, hi, I'd like to return this item with a smile. Smiling is always a great way to start a conversation. Or, I bought this yesterday, but it doesn't sit. Can I exchange it for a different size? Is definitely a good option if you want to swap it for another model instead of just returning it. Then they'll guide you through the process. But just remember to have that receipt ready because it's almost always required. It's your proof of purchase and your ticket to a smooth return. Beyond the specific phrases above, remember these general communication tips that apply to almost any interaction. Speak clearly and slowly. Don't rush your words. The key to good communication is being understood. So it's much better to be understood than to speak quickly and be unintelligible. Don't forget to start with a smile or make eye contact. A friendly demeanor can make interactions much smoother. People are more likely to go out of their way to help someone who seems friendly. And it also shows your confidence and engagement. Pay attention to their response. If you don't understand, don't be afraid to ask for clarification. Even if they have to repeat themselves, that's how communication works. Just try not to ask them to repeat too much, as that can definitely get annoying for everyone. Last but not least, before you go, mentally rehearse a few phrases you might need. This will make you much more confident when practicing them in the real world. I believe you can do it. These tips aren't just for shopping, they're universal. The more you practice, the more natural and comfortable you'll become. Trust us, it gets easier with every trip.
All right, so we've had a really great conversation today, sharing stories and tips. Now, before we wrap up, I want to make sure we lock in some of those super important words and phrases we've been using. Think of these as your personal shopping cheat sheet.
Great idea, Emily. Let me start with 5 vocabulary words you absolutely need. These are the words you'll hear and use all the time in a grocery store or mall, so let's quickly review them to make sure they stick. My first pick is produce. Remember how we talked about looking for cilantro and it's in the produce section? This word simply means fresh fruits and vegetables. It's usually that big, colorful area right when you walk into the grocery store. Yeah, you'll hear people say, I'm just going to grab some produce, or the fresh produce looks great today. It's that whole section with apples, bananas, lettuce, tomatoes, everything fresh and green. My next word is aisle. Aisle, yes. This is just the long pathway between the shelves in a store. It's how stores organize everything. Like when you're looking for cereal, you're looking for the cereal aisle. Right, and they're often numbered, which is super helpful. So if someone says, it's in aisle 7, you know exactly where to go. It makes finding things so much easier than just wandering around. Then cashier is someone you cannot leave the grocery store without passing. This is the person who scans your items and takes your money. You'll always interact with the cashier at the very end of your shopping trip.
Yep, you hand your items to the cashier, they scan them, and then you pay. They're usually pretty good at guiding you through the process, even if you're quiet.
Then, where will you meet the cashier? This is definitely the checkout area where you actually pay for your groceries. You might see or hear checkout lane or checkout counter. And sometimes if you only have a few items, you can use the self-checkout where you scan your own items. That's another great opportunity to practice if you're a bit shy about talking to a person. But actually, I prefer having conversations with other people. It'd be boring if you're not interested in communicating with anyone. That's why I created Let's Talk English with Emily Carpenter to share all these tips with our listeners. Perfect. Then what's your 5th vocabulary word for today, Jennifer? Receipt, I believe. This is your proof of purchase. It's that piece of printed paper or an email that lists everything you bought and how much you paid. Always, always keep your receipt, especially for bigger purchases. You need it if you want to return something or if there's an issue with your bill. It's your best friend for returns.
Now for some super useful phrases. I always start a conversation with someone I don't know with, "Excuse me?" or "Hi, excuse me." This is your polite way to get someone's attention before asking another question. If you see a store employee and you need help, just say, "Excuse me." They'll usually turn around and be ready to help. Then I'll give all listeners here a go-to question when you're looking for anything specific. Replace item with whatever you're searching for. Where can I find the frozen vegetables? Or where can I find the coffee? It's direct, clear, and everyone understands it. Don't overthink it. Just use this phrase. Perfect. Then one of my favorites and also a very helpful phrase is this on sale? Always good to ask, especially if you see a yellow tag or something that looks like a discount. Is this on sale? It looks like a good deal. Yes, you don't want to miss out on a good bargain. Sometimes things are on sale, but the sign is missing or the price isn't updated. Always worth asking to save a few dollars. Then every single time you pay, the cashier will ask you a very common question, cash or card. So be ready to answer quickly. Just say, cash, card please, or yes, debit. Or I'll go with credit. Super simple. No need for a long explanation.
Finally, this phrase is an absolute must, especially if you're buying clothes or electronics. You want to know if you can bring it back if it doesn't work out. What's your return policy?
Yes, learn from my red rose dress mistake and Jennifer's final sale shoes or hurt my feet mistake. Always ask. It will save you so much hassle later.
Oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed.
So there you have it. These words and phrases are your stepping stones to feeling more comfortable and confident on your shopping trips. Practice them, use them, and they'll become second nature.
You've got this! Knowing this will make you feel much more confident and prepared.
And just like that, we've reached the end of another fantastic episode of Let's Talk English with Emily Carpenter. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining me today. This was such a fun and incredibly useful chat. Oh, it's always a blast, Emily. I always love chatting with you and hopefully helping our listeners feel a little more comfortable speaking English in their daily lives, especially their next trip to the grocery store or mall.
I really think we've demystified a big part of everyday English communication today. Remember, friends, going grocery shopping or visiting a mall isn't just about ticking things off your list, it's a goldmine of opportunities to practice your English in real, authentic situations. We talked about overcoming communication challenges like speed, different accents, tricky vocabulary, and we gave you practical tips for asking for help, interacting at the deli, chatting with the cashier, and even understanding return policies. Hopefully, we've given you some tools to overcome them, like asking for clarification and having those key phrases ready. And we shared our own little mishaps and funny moments. Because trust us, even native speakers get confused or say the wrong thing sometimes. It's all part of the learning journey. The biggest takeaway, truly, is to be brave. Don't be afraid to be wrong and know that every single interaction is a chance for you to grow and improve. Embrace those moments. And we want to hear from you. Have you had any funny, confusing, or just plain interesting experiences while shopping in the grocery store or mall? What phrases do you find most useful? Don't forget to drop us a comment below and share your stories. Absolutely. And we want to hear from you. Before we sign off, a huge, heartfelt thank you to all of our amazing listeners for tuning in. If you found this episode helpful, and we really hope you did, please do us a huge favor. Give us a big thumbs up or the like. It really, really helps our channel reach more learners. Share this episode with anyone you know who's learning English or planning a trip to the US. They might just thank you for it. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button for Let's Talk English with Emily Carpenter so you don't miss a single one of our future episodes, and ding that notification bell too. Emily, my friend, I wish I could be here for the whole day to continue chatting with you and helping our listeners explore more topics, but I believe that's enough for today's topic. No rush, I will pull you to the seat again someday. We'll talk to you again very soon. Happy shopping and happy English learning, everyone. See you in the next episode. Love you all, and see you again in another topic soon.